very fortunate today to be speaking with Nancy Rynes, a spiritual explorer who is making the path to a peace-filled life clearer for seekers the world over. Nancy is a leading voice for bringing eternal spiritual wisdom into our lives on Earth, developing our heart-centered intuition and living a life of inspired creativity. Nancy's known for her fun, lighthearted, girl-next-door demeanor. She teaches others how to live a more purposeful, joyful, spiritually inspired life. And she's been featured on pretty big productions, many radio programs, and NBC's Today Show, PBS Television, the Netflix series Surviving Death. She's a popular keynote speaker and workshop leader. Also appeared in many radio programs, Next Level Soul, Buddha at the Gas Pump, Shaman Oaks, which is a cute name instead of Sherman Oaks, Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy, We Don't Die, On the Couch with Dr. Michelle, and Spooky South Coast with Tim Weisberg. Nancy's the author of 2 books, including her bestseller, Awakenings from the Light. Nancy's writings have also been featured in BeliefNet.com, Aspire Magazine, Regenerate Magazine, Excellence Reporter, and the Journal of Exceptional Experiences in Psychology. So welcome, Nancy. Really glad you're here. And this is exciting because your story is not only one of a harrowing and yet fascinating near-death experience, your story is also one of awakening and new beginnings and realizations that go way beyond what most of us see while we've still got an earth body. A near-death experience sort of means, yeah, okay, your consciousness left the earth, but then you came back in. So you've got this a tremendous advantage now. Might also feel a little funny in some ways. Some days you maybe remember what it's like to be over there and maybe miss it. But at any rate, I want to say to everyone on YouTube, Nancy's full story is available on a really wonderful video titled The Near-Death Experience of Nancy Rynes, R-Y-N-E-S. And I do recommend that. I don't usually recommend other people's videos, but it's excellent, beautifully produced. And it tells the whole story. Now, what we're going to do is just give a bit of a shortcut here, jump into the story that Nancy was going to jump on her bike and run some errands. Now, where do you live? Where were you living at the time, Nancy?
At the time, I was living in a small town near Boulder, Colorado. The town was called Lafayette. So it was just outside of Boulder. Right now I'm living in Tucson, Arizona, but all of this that we're going to talk about today took place up in Boulder,
Colorado. Yeah. And you got a bit of an intuitive hit not to get on the bike and to go do the errands, but you're saying out. It's sort of, that feeling so many women get, I've got to get things done. Got on the bike and we're going, I guess, through a roundabout, and you thought a car coming into the roundabout was going to slow down, and so you were in a lane. There was nowhere else for you to go, and anyway, bikes do go in the lanes, and you're going along, and then you realize a huge SUV isn't going to slow down, and she hit you. Now the problem is, even not only did she not see you beforehand, but even once you were on the hood of the car, she still didn't see you because this woman was texting on her phone and not looking at the road, obviously not even looking at the hood. This gives me chills. Distracted driving is a huge problem in our country and many places, and iPhones and whatnot have made it a little bit worse. So you were holding on for dear life of course you slid off after a bit, nothing really to hold on to. And then once you were sort of under the car, something in your backpack sort of stuff got caught under the car. So then you got dragged 60 or 70 feet, and the injuries were very intense. Now tell us what happened next. I could quickly say, by the way, another car saw what was happening and drove in front of this woman's SUV to stop her. Thank God that man saw it. What happened as you were lying there? You scrambled out and away, but something stopped you. And I love this part of the story, so please do tell us.
Yeah, there's actually 2 interesting points here that I want to stress, and it's really important, I think, for your listeners to and viewers too, to understand. Before all of this happened, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. So it wasn't that it was new to me, it's that I didn't really believe in any of it. So during the really worst part of the accident, I noticed something very bizarre. I was in my body and out of my body at the same time. And that was the first really bizarre thing that I couldn't explain as a scientist. I was a scientist before this. and it just threw me. And that sense of being in two places at once, watching everything happen from outside of me, but also from inside of me at the same time, was like, what the heck is that? And that lasted until the paramedics got there, which was a few minutes later, after, a few minutes after the vehicle stopped. And they started, doing a quick exam, and the pain was just so intense that both of those pieces of me and pieces of my consciousness came back together. Now, the other funky thing is that when the vehicle stopped, when those other people stopped the vehicle in that truck, my immediate thought was, it was a total instinctual thing for me. I wanted to literally get up and run.
Of course.
And I didn't feel any pain through all of this. I didn't feel any physical pain through all of this. I know that sounds bizarre to people, but during these traumatic accidents, you really don't feel that pain, the physical pain, until later. I was just focused on surviving. And I was certainly scared, but not in any pain. So as soon as that vehicle stopped, I was like in the middle of the front of the underneath of this vehicle, so I couldn't see out from underneath. I started to wiggle out, kind of like shimmying, and lucky for me, I didn't really do any damage to myself at that point. I really shouldn't have done that, but my instinct was to get up and run. So I'm trying to shimmy out, and as soon as I get my kind of this part of my body out from underneath the hood under the vehicle, there was a woman who, I don't know where she came from. She looked to be late 20s to early 30s. And she ran up and put her hands like really right here on my shoulders and held me down. And she said her name was Anne, and that she was a trauma nurse. And she was going to stay with me until, the paramedics came. But she told me, it's really important that you don't move, because we don't know what's wrong with you. But she actually had to physically restrain me for quite a while, because I really wanted to just get up and run. That was my instinct, was like, up, run. Well, first I wanted to get up, deck the woman who hit me. That was my first thought. I was like,
yes. I don't blame you.
Because I knew she was texting, and I was not happy about that. And then I wanted to run. That was it. I couldn't control that instinct to move. And so this woman held me down. I don't know who she was. She was not the driver. She came from somewhere else, and she stayed with me until the paramedics came, and she moved off a little bit. And she actually did speak to one of the police officers who came in. But then she sort of disappeared. Like, only one police officer saw her. I did speak to him later. He said, yeah, I saw her, but she wouldn't give me her name. She wouldn't give me where she worked. So we didn't really know who she was. And she told me that she would accompany me in the ambulance as it went to the hospital, but she never got in. So I don't know really what happened. But she actually very likely saved my life. My neck was really badly broken, and my back was shot. Like, I really would have been at least a paraplegic had she not done that. If I would have tried to have stood up, my back would have completely collapsed. It was that bad. And my bones were just shattered in my lower back. So she saved my ability to walk. I can still walk and hike and do all that stuff thanks to her. And very likely saved my life, because my neck was in pretty bad shape. So that was like the second really weird thing. And the funky thing with that was the district attorney's office couldn't locate her. For 6 months, they tried to locate this woman, and they couldn't find anybody matching that description at any hospital. And they looked in Colorado, Western Kansas, and a couple other pieces like northern New Mexico and adjoining areas. They couldn't find anybody. And they looked. We weren't really out to get her. We just wanted to thank her. Really, that's all we wanted to do. But she disappeared. So there's a lot of theories about who she was. I just call her my angel. I don't know, who
absolutely.
she really was.
Well, I really got the strong impression when I first heard this story on the video. Immediately you said a woman came out of nowhere. I thought, yeah, because angels show up in these moments.
Yeah.
And the fact that she wouldn't give the name is fascinating, and that she couldn't be found afterwards. She said she'd go with you. From my intuitive viewpoint, she was with you, but invisibly so.
Yeah. I realized that later.
Mhm.
But at the time I was like, wait a minute, she's supposed to be here. I was still stuck in physical up here. I wasn't at that point yet where I had truly awoken to all of this. So I was in that learning process. But you're right. I think that's what really happened now in hindsight, that I look back at it. And whoever she was, very, very grateful that she was there, because my life would have been way different if I would have survived. So
Okay, so let's go out on a little bit of a limb here and say that you were supposed to, for whatever reasons, maybe too complex for you to know right now, but you were supposed to have that situation in your life, that event, but you weren't supposed to leave at that moment. It wasn't an exit point.
Right. Yeah.
This is something angels will do. They'll
Yeah.
come in and they'll prevent a death that isn't supposed to happen yet. If
Yeah.
it's one of your exit points, and you do feel like, yeah, if you feel like I'm done here, okay, I'm going home, that's one thing, but you were not done. This was a door opening, because you've had all this beautiful work that you've been doing. So, all right, let's get to the nitty gritty of it. That you got to the hospital, a lot of pain, they got you into surgery, I hope very, very quickly. And while you're on anesthesia, you've been under before, you'd had another operation, that fogginess, which I have been under twice, but I didn't experience the fogginess. I just went out like that. But I had memory later of what was going on in the operating room, which is interesting. I could kind of see things, even though I wasn't awake at the time. But tell us what happened as you went under. Something strange starts happening.
Yeah, I just noticed I was fading a little bit, when they gave me the anesthesia. And because for me, they wheeled me in fully conscious, which really kind of freaked me out. But
yeah,
but they gave me the anesthesia, and I noticed I'm starting to drift away. And I thought it felt like I was napping at first, and it was a little bit gray. And then all of a sudden, I'm waking up, and I'm like, whoa, what's this all about? I'm waking up, and I'm not in the hospital room anymore. I'm waking up, and I'm like, I feel as though I'm physically standing vertically. So I like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be standing here. I just broke my back in 9 places, and this shouldn't be happening. So I'm standing up in what looks like an open meadow in this really beautiful landscape of just like distant trees and flowers in the meadow, and these rolling hills in the far distant, background, and some mist and kind of a misty silvery blue sky. No sun though, like no physical orb of a sun or a moon or anything like that. Just a brilliantly bright sky. And after a time, I kind of knew, wait a minute, something's not right here. This isn't, I had all of my analytical faculties, which for physicians that I speak with who do anesthesia, especially, and like what you experienced with your surgery, that kind of stuff isn't supposed to happen when we go under. You're not supposed to retain your ability to remember that. They give you a ton of amnesiac drugs as well as the anesthesia. I didn't know that at the time. But I found that out later, and they had given that to me. So, but I had like my brain or my mental faculties were still functioning really well, and perhaps even better than here. So I was analyzing things and remembering things, and I remembered that I had just gone into surgery, and like that I shouldn't be experiencing this because it should just be black or gray or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just trying to analyze what in the world's going on here. I've never had this happen before. And I'm like, in my mind, is this a hallucination? No, it's like too real for a hallucination. I know what a hallucination is. I've had I had a really bad reaction to Vicodin once, and I know what, hallucinating from medication feels like. This was hyper real. In fact, it was more real, and you'll probably hear this a lot from people like me. It was hard to describe that it's more real than here. Like it was, I knew that was real and this was not. And that was very clear, even though I really didn't fully understand yet what was going on. I did shortly thereafter, but in that moment, I'm like, this is so real. And that thing that we call Earth was like, some kind of a dream. So that's where I found myself. And finally, I was welcomed. There was a voice that welcomed me to home. Basically, this is your home. You mentioned that already. Yeah. This is your home. Welcome home. And then it was like, boom, that was the thing that helped me. All of the memories from before this life flooded back. And it was like, oh, now I remember a lot of this stuff. Not all of it yet, but a lot of the kind of the trappings of what was going on was like, it just flooded back like a wave. And then I realized, that Earth thing, that is a dream, that is a simulation, that isn't, quote, our ultimate reality. Mm-hmm. This place, whatever this is, this was the beginning of our ultimate reality. And that was bizarre, like to get that, not really a download, but a remembering of the nature of all of this. And because when we're here, we're so focused on these physical bodies and this physical existence, but it's not real. And the funky thing is that one incident, when I came back here, was really one of the two big catalysts for my growth. Realizing that this reality isn't ultimate reality. And then one other thing we're going to talk about in just a little bit that propelled me on this not only spiritual journey, but a journey, because I was a scientist, of, for myself at least, integrating both science and spirituality. And it's been a really interesting, sometimes crazy ride since all of that. So we can talk about that if you'd like.
Absolutely. Now, refresh my memory. Where was the point at which you realized you weren't alone? You did hear the voice saying, welcome home, but then there was another beautiful presence who seemed to come out of nowhere and walk toward you. Do you have any memory of what that person looked like?
I don't. I have the memory of what I was allowed to see.
Okay.
So I like to say she was wearing a cloak of a female, but she said her act, she's genderless basically, but she was wearing this cloak. She likes to use that word to make it more comfortable for me to, in that state of where I was, mentally and spiritually, to talk with her, because I was like on the verge of really freaking out. And it's a big transition for anybody, but when you go from atheist scientist to like, holy crap, I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
That's just not, it doesn't compute. So she came up to me like from behind me and to my right. I just noticed that it was sort of like a gray mist back there. And it was like something from a really funky movie, but she was just emerging from the mist. And so she appeared to be anyway, a little bit taller than me. She had really long brown hair, took on the appearance of someone with really long brown hair, probably down like to the middle of her back. And it was kind of wavy, curly. She was, I'm 5'3". She was maybe 3 or 4 inches taller than me in appearance. And her skin was really hard to pinpoint. Like if I was going to try to assign her to an ethnic group, it would be really hard, because it was like I couldn't tell if it was shifting
Yeah.
or it was just everything, you know?
Mhm. Yes.
And it didn't really matter because that stuff doesn't matter. You know, once you leave this body, ethnicity doesn't matter. And she wore these beautiful garments, and now I call it her garments of light, Light, because they were very drapey. They look like if we were to make something like that here, it would be probably made out of a mix of silk and a really fine linen, but with almost like with silver and gold threads throughout, because it sparkled and shimmered and
Shimmer.
glowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was like, I wish I could design something like that here. But there wasn't like it wasn't fitted. It was just this flowing top and skirt, long skirt combination. But she came up and I knew that I knew her from somewhere, but it was like I couldn't quite place her. But I knew that we had been acquainted before. And she didn't tell me her name at that point, even though I asked, you know, who are you? She wouldn't tell me her name. The other funky thing is she would not allow me to see the features of her face. So she didn't carry specific features on her. And it actually kind of freaked me out because I'm still in that like weird state. It was blurry. Her face was always a blur. Like anytime I tried to, like if I'm looking at you, Caroline, I see your features. I really tried. I really wanted to see what features she was going to present to me. And all I got was fog. It was like a foggy face.
Yeah.
And so she didn't really want to be fully known at that point. But I remembered her energy, her essence. I had just that moment of, I know this person, but I don't.
Yes. Yes. That's what I was going to ask. Did you intuitively feel that you'd known her from somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah.
And okay, so this wasn't really a stranger. Did you feel, or did this person say at any time, well, I'm your guide, I've been with you your whole life?
Yeah, she said, I'm your guide. She didn't say the whole life thing, although I did find that out later. But at that time, she didn't say your whole life. No. And she wasn't the only one that had been with me my whole life.
Sure.
Because I'd gotten myself into some predicaments before. I found out later from one of the other ones that they had saved my tuchus a couple of different times.
Okay.
This wasn't the first one. I can just imagine, you know, you get those pictures of the guardian angels who are like, holy crap. Yeah. That's probably mine. But she said she was going to be my guide and my teacher. So my guide to this place and my teacher for what I needed to learn in order to come back here, you know, to this life on Earth. And I sort of balked at that. I didn't want to come back here after experiencing just that little bit. I didn't want to be back here. This was really hard compared to, you know, the spiritual realm, even the little bit that I saw. And, you know, I was kind of a rebel, I guess, all my life, but I was being a rebel with her. And I'm like, well, she thinks she's going to send me back, but I'm not going to go back.
Yeah, I've heard that. Many people will say, I'm not going back. Yeah, very, very interesting. And someone will appear, a guide, maybe Yeshua himself, could be anybody, and they'll say, you have to go back.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't see any relatives coming forward. You didn't go through a tunnel of light or anything like that. Okay. So it looks like you just came into this way station, basically. And you were supposed to realize certain things and experience them and remember them. Clearly, you remember a ton, and then carry all that back with you, which is fantastic. You know, I'm wondering, let me see here. Oh, gosh, I've got so many questions. You know, when you talk to people about this, particularly because you mentioned, you know, that you had this Catholic school upbringing when you were a youngster, and that the atheist is meant to burn in hell, which is kind of ridiculous because spirits can't burn. Spirit is, it's etheric. It's not something you can grab a hold of and toss in a fire of any kind. But does anybody ever say to you, well, wait a minute, I can either believe you or I can believe everything I've ever been taught by religion? And am I supposed to make a choice here? You know, what would you say to someone?
I'm not really asking people to make a choice. There are people who certainly reject the idea that everyone is welcomed. I mean, there are some very exclusive believers who think that, you know, and trust me, I get emails from them a lot where they, you know, their idea is that only certain people, sometimes it's only men, get to go. You know, I still get that.
Wow.
And or, you know, you have to believe a certain way or go to a specific building on Sunday morning or Saturday night or whatever. And I still get that. I'm like, well, that's totally up to you. But I keep reminding people, you know, what I learned is exactly what's in a lot of the New Testament and even the Old Testament, is that God is love. It doesn't say God is love for just a couple people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Absolutely brilliant. You know, I really appreciate that, because I was just thinking, if I got into a discussion with somebody along those lines, I would say, well, isn't everything just about showing love to one another as well as ourselves, being kind to ourselves as well? Do you feel like some people at least are more open to this, at least as a point of conjecture that what you went through might be real? Yeah. And not just hallucination.
I think most people are.
There was a doctor who had a fairly famous, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. He had a fairly famous near-death experience and wrote a book about it. And other doctors were saying, well, you know, the brain will go into this sort of, the synapses are firing and the brain will produce these kind of hallucinatory situations. But thankfully, you had already been through that and you said, no, that's not what it was.
So, I actually thought about that myself, you know, because I've got this really drilled in my head physical sciences background. So that was certainly one of the things I thought about when I came back from all of this.
You're a scientist.
And I actually rejected it. There were certain things that happened during the NDE itself. I was given very specific views of the future. And so this event happened in 2014. Early, it was in January. Well, the actual NDE was January 6th of 2014. The crash itself happened on the 3rd, so a few days earlier. But during the NDE, there were certain things I was told about what was going to happen with myself, which it's private. I'm not going to talk about that, but all of them but one have come true so far. Wow. And they're very specific. But the ones that it wasn't just my own personal future. It was the future of the country. And one of them was, they told me, and I totally rejected this at the time. They said Donald Trump was going to be the next president of the United States. I'm like, you guys are blowing smoke. At that point, he hadn't even thrown his hat in the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know he was political at any stage, and certainly not seriously. So I thought that was a bunch of baloney, and they said, no, he's going to be the next president. So when he was elected, it was like another one of those holy cow moments. This wasn't a product of my brain. This wasn't the synapses firing after death. Somebody got into me and told me ahead of time, these are the things that are going to happen. And they did that so that I knew, it was like a continual reinforcement that this was real, that it wasn't a hallucination, that it wasn't just random firing of, you know, brain synapses. I can't refute and I even talked to Megyn Kelly about this, who had her own run-in with Donald Trump. And she said, honey, I wish you would have told me that a lot earlier.
Well, what I love, I just want to quickly say what I love is that you emphasize, as you're telling this story, that your experience on the other side, if you want to call it that, felt and was much more real even than what we feel in this 3D, simulation of physicality, which, if you know even a tiny bit about quantum physics, everything is energy. And this is what we call solid material, really is just very dense collection of molecules, and it doesn't last. Everything changes over time. And it looks like they looked into your timeline and said, okay, we're gonna tell you, we see this, it's already starting to spin out, it's already starting to be real. And yeah, fantastic. I'm so glad that they told you those items so that you could then come back with that. So, something else that fascinates me is that rather than talking about karma, you use the phrase, we're here to make amends, which is really beautiful, because karma is such a misunderstood and misused term.
Yeah.
And were there situations where you came back and you thought, I was wrong about this and that, and I need to change it?
Yeah,
Because
a lot.
people report doing this. They come back and they say, oh, I've got to change just about everything.
Yeah, all you need to do is go through one life review, and that's what I did, go through a life review. And I have to tell you, the hardest thing I've ever gone through, and sometimes it still makes me cry, because it was so deep and so powerful you realize in just a blink of an eye, you realize so much stuff, but a lot of it is how connected we all are. You realize all of this is energy, and we're connected via that energy. I call it the energy of the divine field, or the divine love. And whatever I do in my life, I am not doing just in my life. It affects everything else around me, everybody else around me. And when you're presented, like I was presented with certain incidents that basically I messed up. Everybody does. It's not a big deal on the other side, but it's more that they want, at least with my guide and the rest of my team, they wanted me to see my impacts, both positive and negative. They never do a negative without a positive. So it's always a balanced presentation of your life. I've not even heard of anybody who doesn't get that balance. So even though you're wanting to focus on the stuff you did wrong, you're still presented with a balance of things you did great and things you didn't do so great. But when you see those things you don't do so great, at least for the most people that I've talked to that have had one of these, not only do you see what's going on, I mean, I saw it sort of like it was a video on YouTube, but then I was also in it again, not just a memory, but like I was reliving it, but from myself, but also I was reliving that incident from the point of view of whoever else was there with me, like who I was interacting with.
Yes.
So if it was something, let's say with a coworker, I'd be watching it from a third dimension, outside. I'd be in it from my perspective, and then also in it from the coworker's perspective. So it was very bizarre. But when you're reviewing all these like that, and that, especially in that kind of multi-dimensional way, all of a sudden you realize that those connections, and that everything you do has an impact. Everything you say has an impact. It's not that we're expected to be perfect, but you realize, oh my gosh, I need to be a lot better, and I want to fix that. They're not, your guide or God or whoever isn't telling you need to fix that. It's coming from in here, like, oh my gosh, I really screwed that one up. Can I go back and fix that, please? I want to fix that. You may not be able to fix the incident, but you want to fix the energy, the relationship. And that's really the point of it, is that making amends is really, I was given a gift to come back here and make amends as much as possible, and to shift that energy of those relationships to a more positive point of view, and one that would be positive not only for me but for the other person. You realize that you don't want to leave that energy in a bad state. It all of a sudden for me became all about energy. Everything was about the energy of love, of positivity, of compassion, and making everything kind of move in that direction. instead of about, this idea people have about karma. We misuse that term so much, it sort of becomes payback. And that's not really what it's about. It's about learning the lesson. And I was given the opportunity, as much as I didn't want to come back here at the time, I was given the opportunity to come back here and right those quote wrongs or change up that energy so that I wouldn't carry that energy into my afterlife and have to fix it again and again and again and come back on the cycle. So I was given the opportunity to clear that energy out. So I was done with it. Not that I was going to get payback. That's not what it's all about.
I'm very, very glad you're making that distinction, because most people who use the term karma are saying, well, you deserve it because you did something awful in this life or that life or whatever. And I don't think that's the point at all. But did you in that moment get the idea or get the feeling that the whole human race is being given a chance right now to clear things up so we don't have to keep coming back to a third dimensional experience and slogging through and then making more mistakes and coming back and trying to cure that? And oh gosh, we've been on this wheel, we've been on this hamster wheel. It's very intense. So that's a powerful.
There are multiple layers here, as you well know, of evolution. So there's individual evolution spiritually, but then there's also the evolution of us as a society, as a planet. And that's another layer of, you hit the nail on the head perfectly with that our entire society right now is in an evolutionary cycle. And we're being given an opportunity to look around and make those amends as best as we can, like you said, so we don't have to continue on this. It may not happen tomorrow. Maybe it will. I don't know. I don't know how to predict that, but we are on a cycle, both individually and as a whole, as a society. And the more of us that work on ourselves and get ourselves kind of in this progressing on our own personal evolutionary path, it sort of tips that energy balance for the whole too. So it's not like the 100th monkey. I think it takes a little bit more than that, but from what I can tell, the more of us, and what I was told was the more of us that work on ourselves and help ourselves evolve spiritually, the more we're pushing that energy into the positive for the entire society. And that's the big thing. That's why actually they told me why a lot of us have been given this opportunity. It's not just, it isn't only because science, medical science has progressed to bring people back, but there's a very specific spiritual reason why so many people have had these experiences and placed, they're very specific about placing people in certain physical locations. And I think there's a big balance, or there's a plan going on here at some level of, spacing experiencers out, whether it's an NDE or something else. It's not just the NDE, but placing experiencers at certain key points around the globe to help the society change its energy as well. So there are multi levels here of evolutionary thinking, and it can be very complex. But I ask people, my own students and clients, focus on yourself if that's all you can do, and that's great, because that helps the entire planet.
Absolutely wonderful. Are you yourself then a spiritual teacher now?
I am, yeah, and I sort of, when I first started doing it, I was like kind of reluctant, because that wasn't my intent. When it may have been my guide's intent, but it wasn't my intent when I came back here. I really just wanted to live my life, and was sort of guided to write push really into writing the book Awakenings from the Light, and from there it sort of just evolved on its own. And sometimes I back off and don't do quite as much, and sometimes I do more. It really depends on how that energy feels for me. But mostly what I'm focused on are, like small group workshops and some online classes that I've got, and then individual students. And the individual students is where I feel like I'm making a really good positive impact, not necessarily globally all at once, but certainly in individual lives. And it's not that I'm trying to be a preacher or anything like that. It's really more about here's what I experienced, here's what you can learn from it. Let's help you develop your own practices, your own way of going about your own evolution, so that you can reach the state that you want to be.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Because it's about spiritual progression. It's not about swallowing dogma, right, whether that's New Age or some old religion. It's about just moving forward and finding one's own path, and everybody respecting that, not saying, oh, this is where you should be, but you say, all right, you're here. What's the next step? What's the next, forward movement? So, all right, let's just go back for a moment to the life review. You saw it in a sort of a pond, the reflection of a pond, which is so interesting. Did you have a feeling at that point, this is only a way station, or did your teacher say that? Or does it generally, the life review, from what I understand, happens when somebody's really fully passed?
Well, actually, quite a few people who come back have them. But right, it's not 100%. I would say it's probably about 50%. It's a 50-50 deal. Mm-hmm. They told me that I wasn't going to be there forever, that I was just coming back, that it was sort of like a waiting room or a green room or something like that. I thought it was, in my mind, I wanted that to be the jumping off for the final bit of, quote, heaven or the afterlife. Like, I knew it was an in-between place. I knew that for a fact, that this was not a physical place, but an energetic level, energetic state, an in-between energetic state between this earthly dimension and the beginnings of the true spiritual. So I knew that, and I knew because I had asked about that, but I also noticed that as we were walking through all these different places during my NDE, if I would once in a while just I wanted to see what was going on back there when I walked away from it, and it always faded off into fog. It was like being on the holodeck in Star Trek. Yeah. And that sort of freaked me out a little bit too. Like, so when I walk past all that stuff, it just disappears. So this wasn't, it was on the path to the full spiritual realms, which is all energetic. It isn't, when you're in this place with, or idea of what we call, quote, heaven. They don't call it that. But
I call it the higher realms.
Yeah, the higher realms. I call it the spiritual realms sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not physical. People have a hard time wrapping their brains around that.
Yes.
It isn't physical. You can make it look that way if you're really attached to this.
Yeah. No.
But it really at heart is not physical. It's an energetic state of being. And I was beginning to understand that when I was here, because I was in that transition zone between the two. No. So that was pretty cool as a scientist to be like,
Absolutely. We're right. So you didn't see the Hall of Records, the Akashic records. You didn't go into anything like that to look at your life chart or anything like that?
No, not at that time. And the thing is that all those, again, this is where I take exception to some of the terminology that we have. Like the Hall of Records, the healing places, all of that, they do exist, but they're not, at their core, they're not a physical place either. They're all like an energetic place. So I could technically have accessed my records in this in-between place if I knew how to do it. I didn't have to necessarily go somewhere to do it. Now, my teacher, my guide, knew all that stuff. I don't know if she knew all that because she had access to those that information through the records, or if she just knew me, like, because she'd been with me probably too many times to count. But I could have easily, in fact, I've done I've learned past life regression in the interim, in the last few years. And one of the clients that I had, only one so far out of a lot that I've seen, has been able to access her own Akashic records from within her hypnotic state. So you can do it. It just takes a level of adeptness to be able to do it. But those places, or it really should say states of being, those do exist. And, you know, certain souls have to go through a very intensive healing state before they can move on to the full spiritual realms. Others don't. And it's just really dependent on each individual. That
is a big issue to me. Yeah. Because people tend to assume, all of us tend to assume, oh, once you're off the higher realms, you're totally fine. You'll be healed like that. And then I began to hear from people, well, actually, after people pass, particularly if they've been in a situation of trauma, they're kind of wrapped up, something like a warm cocoon, a warm blanket. I'm encouraged just to heal, just to rest from what might be 6 months worth of earth time. And what I found fascinating, people are starting to catch on, because there was a woman who put on Facebook recently that she was having a session with a channeler, and Sinead O'Connor's spirit came in, and this is after Sinead O'Connor had just passed. And she said through the channeler that all the love and support and prayers that people were flowing to her was real. All of it was really helping her to heal. Now, this woman, tremendous gifts, obviously, as a singer-songwriter, absolutely 1 in a million, or 1 in 20 million, but a very rough life. And it seems that certain forms of mental illness seem to run in the family, very, very sadly. And I was so stunned. I mean, I kind of knew that. I'd heard, you know, all our prayers and our love, etc., going to those who have passed on does help them. And yet I didn't quite take it in fully until that moment. It was like she was in the room with me, and I thought, oh gosh, yeah. Really do have to heal. You do have to recuperate.
Yeah, some people really need that. And you know, my team told me that too, as they were, you know, booting me back to planet Earth. To not forget them, that they loved our prayers, our thoughts, our words. They liked hearing from us, even if we couldn't hear them. That energy of love, you know, goes through all different phases of reality. So that's what they were really trying to help me understand, is that, you know, giving us your love or sending that love to us, we really do feel that. And it's very important that people continue to do that after someone, you know, transitions, because they're still around, they're just in a different form. But that love is so powerful, especially if it's not, I have to say it in a very specific way, if it's true love, not attachment, not, you know, some kind of negative, fear-filled, quote, you know, Eros kind of love. If it's really truly love, that love transcends any dimension, and it goes through all places, all times, all dimensions.
Yeah. Very beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and really inspiring. Do you feel now, looking back on this experience, because you did come back into the body, and it must have felt pretty heavy once you did that. That must have felt like, oh wow, okay, I'm back. You weren't depressed at all, is that right?
Not for a while. I was kind of and this is very typical of people who have a spiritual experience of any kind. You're kind of floating high for a while. There's this euphoria that you come back with, and you're sort of glowing, because I think your body's actually giving off more light energy than normal. You know, your body typically does, it is biophotonic. So your body really does give off light particles, just everybody does. But when you come back from these experiences, you're giving off more, you know, because you're more energized and you're at kind of that higher level of vibration or energy. So people were telling me like, wow, it's like this glow, not just, you know.
Oh, I love
a smile on my face. It was more of this glow, but you're in that I call it the afterglow period. And it lasted for me at least probably 6 to 9 months where I was floating high on that. And then it's not that I crashed, but I missed home. And it was like 6 to 9 months in where I was like, oh man, this is so hard. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
This is really hard, really tough stuff. My body healed fine. I was having trouble. One of the things I came back with was a real challenge being able to speak properly. It's gone now, but it took me a long time to be able to put a coherent sentence together, which for me was crazy. But so those things started getting me down. I really missed being, in the spiritual realms, in those higher realms, because this is hard. This is tough stuff down here at this level. And it finally hit me. And then about a year after that, so a year after I kind of started not really being super happy about being back here on Earth, I wasn't like clinically depressed or anything, but I was kind of down, and I had an epiphany one day when I was in my vehicle. I was driving along the mountains of near Boulder, north of Boulder, just at the base of the foothills. And I crested this hill, and it hit me all of a sudden, like out of the blue. I started bawling, and I realized what was going on. I had to pull over. There was this overwhelming understanding of what was going on with me. And I was realizing I was angry that I was sent back here. And I felt bereft, really, missing my team, my friends, but also just angry that I felt like I wasn't given a choice. Now, I was given a choice prior to my time here in this body.
Yes.
But I didn't know that at the time. I only got that knowledge and memory a little bit later. But I realized how angry I was, and that I had been carrying that anger with me. And in that moment, I was, sobbing along the side of the road. I had totally pulled off because there was no way I was going to drive. And I'm sobbing, and I said, Creator, just help me release this, because it's not helping me. And within a few seconds, it was like all of that anger just got sucked out, and it was gone. But I had to experience it. I had to go through that in order to make that next leap in my own personal journey, and continue on. You have to continue to release that stuff, because that negative stuff, or those negative energies, will keep you from really moving on in your own evolution.
That's an excellent point, Nancy. Thank you for saying that, because even though we do choose basically the events of our life, we can still choose. We have a lot of leeway in terms of how we respond to those events. And that's a huge part of our path, isn't it? That's tremendous. If there's anything else you'd like to say to viewers or listeners, that would be wonderful. If somebody's feeling like, and I have talked to, as a channel, I've talked to a number of people who just feel like, look, I can't keep going. It's too much. It's too heavy. What would you say to them? You can say, yeah, it's beautiful over on the other side, but then there's point B after that, isn't there?
Yeah, the real point of that is that we're here for a reason.
Yeah.
And there's a few things that you can do to kind of get through that. I totally understand. I mean, don't get me wrong. I totally get it if people are in that place. It's really challenging, especially for those of us who maybe have been around the block a few times, and we start to, I think we even if we don't know it, I remember several of my past lives, but not all of them. But when you start to see patterns in society that kind of remind you of something like 2 or 3 lives ago, you're like, this is getting to be tough stuff again. It makes it hard really to just watch, but really the things to do are focus on love, in your own life. The best thing to do is really pull back. You know, a lot of my students get all caught up in the whole world. You cannot save the world by yourself as much. I mean, this is my own personal lesson too. Like, I get this. I wanted to save the whole planet when I came back. Like, you know, can't you guys just see all this? But you can only, the best thing you can do is really focus on yourself and your family. Really learn how to, and there's certain meditative techniques you can do to learn how to access your connection. You're always connected to divine love, but to really strengthen that connection and make it real for you in the here and now, you can do certain things to do that. And then you can use that connection to help other people around you. And that's really, I think that kind of thing, focusing close to home, helps people through this. And it gives you something that you actually can do. Because when you're looking at the entire world and you realize, well, there's nothing that I can do, it's all just so depressing. Well, pull back and think about what you can do in this moment. And a woman who I really admired, who died while I was in the hospital, she was a good friend of mine, and I miss her every day. And I cry every time. I got a note from her while I was in the hospital, and she was dying of cancer. Too early. She was too young, very young. She had ovarian cancer. And the last thing that I ever got from her was a note card. I still have it with me over here on the shelf. But one of the things that she said in that note card stuck with me. And it's focus on what you can do in this moment, not on what you can't. So always remember, if you're getting yourself so depressed by looking at the entire world, pull back from that a little bit. I'm not asking you to ignore the world, but pull back and focus on what you can do in your own life and in the lives of those people around you to help, you know, your own little sphere of influence. And that usually will help people kind of reset themselves and their heart, because it's easier to have an impact on people that you know. And not that I'm asking people to, you know, be an evangelist or anything. That's not what I mean. But be kind, be compassionate, help other people, you know, be of service, help the neighbor take his garbage cans out if he's just broken his leg or something. You know, help your neighbors out. We've lost that in this country. We need to start doing that again.
Yes.
You know, just reach out and help people.
Yeah, and you know, you do mention that in that longer video that you were kind to a woman who was having a terrible day. She was at the register, you know, in a shop, and people had been behaving badly toward her customers, and you were very kind and let her know she's doing a great job, and that lifted her spirits. And I mean, and you saw this in the life review, which I love, these little moments. And I had heard this, I think Sylvia Brown talks about this in her book, The Other Side and Back, where she said, you know, you'll be noticing, oh, I screwed up here and there, and I was mean to this person. And somebody will come forward and say, oh, you're not so bad. Take a look at this lovely moment that you were kind to someone. And we think it's just little. And unfortunately, in US culture, we take, more in some places than others, as kindness and being sweet and vulnerable and supportive is kind of a weakness. You're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be, you know, self-enclosed, a kind of wounded masculinity. And we've got to come out of that now. All this beautiful light pouring in this universe, onto this planet. This is a time of huge, huge change. I'm wondering, did you feel that? That would be my last question. Did you feel, oh boy, this planet's really going through a huge shift when you were over there? Did someone say something?
Actually, I feel it more, I think, when I came back. I didn't, you know, I didn't get as much of the evolutionary stuff for the planet when I was there. I got some. But it was when I came back, because I kept up my communication with my main guide, and she kept teaching me. Sometimes I would be in meditation and she'd pull me out of body, which was, at first it was like, what the hell are you doing? I didn't know how to astral travel. And all of a sudden she's pulling me out, and we're, you know, going back over to the higher realms again, and I'm not dead. So that was kind of crazy. But it was during that, like the first 18 months that I was back, that I began to really see, like, wow, this place is on this, it's on a tipping point. a good tipping point, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an easy ride. But one of the things that she and the rest of my team wanted people to know is that, again, we are being given as much help as we can take in, whether that's through, like me, having a spiritual experience, or, you know, whether someone's led to a particular teacher or a book or a video or whatever. We are being given a lot of assistance to make this transition, but more and more of us need to be conscious of that. We need to be more conscious of not only the future, but also how we are in the present moment. And Eckhart Tolle talks about this a lot. Sometimes it's hard. He's living life, I think, always in the higher realm. So sometimes it's hard to grasp the full impact of what he's saying. But one of the things that I've been guided to do is really to teach people how to live more joyfully and creatively in the present, and not focus too much on the future or worry too much about the past, because the present moment is where all of this joy is, all of this love is, all of your creativity is in the now moment. All of your connection to everyone around you is in the now moment. So that's what I teach people to really focus on, is how to be as present as possible in the moment and not get your brain going in 50 different directions at once, which is what we're sort of in right now as the society. We're letting our brains just go crazy. And so we're completely unfocused. And so focusing in on that present moment, whether it's with meditation or going for a run or a hike or a walk or whatever, really helps, I think, reset our ability to live in a more connected spiritual state now. And that's what we're really being asked to focus on in order to tip the scales into a kind of a positive future. They call it the golden outcome. I've seen it. I mean, they showed that to me, and it's incredibly beautiful, really. And it's there. I mean, that's our goal. That's our destination as a species, is that golden outcome. But we have to help get there. We have to, all of us, begin to work on that for ourselves. And each one of us has a lot of stuff. We're all carrying, you know, stuff around that we can learn how to jettison in order to make that reality better, you know, more attainable for ourselves, but also for the entire planet. So yeah, back to the present moment.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And as we're pouring a lot of love and thankfulness in the present moment, our vibration moves, a new vibrational set point, and then we shift our reality. Maybe if enough people do it, we shift the planet's reality.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That is wonderful. So the book is Awakenings from the Light.
Yep.
And have you got a website as well, Nancy?
I do. Yeah, it's just nancyrynes.com, NancyRynes.com.
Yeah, fantastic. Also in the Netflix series Surviving Death, Awakenings from the Light, probably on Amazon.
Yep.
Again, there's a very full interview called The Near-Death Experience of Nancy Rynes, available on YouTube as well. This is a phenomenal story, absolutely beautiful. I was so touched by a lot of what you say in it. And thank you so much for being here. Huge blessings. I hope you'll come back. And of course, we'll have to talk with your friend Ken Elliott again as well for Manifesting 123. Yeah, that's he's traveled out of body as well. You're both in good company there. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Huge blessings. And thank you to everyone, our listeners and viewers. And we'll see you again. Namaste.
Thank you.